$40,000 a month after taxes. The job description was simple: act as the stand-in boyfriend for a top-tier socialite. When faced with that kind of life-changing money, I signed on the dotted line faster than anyone else. My name is Lucas Miller, and I consider myself a highly professional emotional consultant. Over the past 3 years, I managed to turn this ridiculous high-society drama into a lucrative career. On the day my contract was set to expire, her first love returned to the States, and the female CEO prepared to let me go. I did not just walk away with a $5 million severance package. I also pocketed an extra million from her first love as a fee to disappear. Just as I was packing my bags for Alaska to see the Northern Lights, the cold CEO showed up in the Arctic Circle with tears in her eyes. "Lucas, I know it was just a contract, but my feelings for you are real," she sobbed. I glanced at the bank notification on my phone and gave her a polite smile. "Boss, the trial period is over. If you want to renew, it is going to cost you extra." I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My fingers traced the nearly invisible scar on my chin. Olivia Sterling had given me that mark last week while she was intoxicated. As she leaned toward me, her fingers brushed against my cheek and her eyes grew hazy. "Julian," she whispered in a thick voice, "you never used to have a scar right here." I gently took her wrist and smiled. "Your memory is playing tricks on you," I said. She stared at me for a long moment before shoving me away and stumbling toward the bedroom. "No," she slurred, "you are not him." I remained where I was, reaching out to steady her as she passed by. Of course I was not him. My name is Lucas Miller. 3 years ago, I stumbled into a life that felt like a plot from a supermarket novel. You could call it the story of a billionaire CEO and her rented lover. I became the paid replacement for Olivia Sterling's first love, a man named Julian Harrison. The script was painfully cliché. Julian had to move abroad for family business, and Olivia, the brilliant but lonely CEO of Sterling Industries, was so devastated that she hired a lookalike to fill the void. After 3 years, Julian was set to return, and the stand-in was supposed to disappear with grace. To everyone's surprise, the CEO realized she had actually fallen for the substitute. It was a setup for a dramatic cinematic chase to win him back. I was cast as that unlucky stand-in. There was just one detail. I did not feel unlucky in the slightest. In fact, I felt like I had won the lottery. Olivia Sterling paid incredibly well for my services. At $40,000 a month after taxes, I would have been willing to call her mother if she asked. Playing a substitute boyfriend was child's play by comparison. "Mr. Miller, Miss Sterling's car has arrived," the housekeeper said softly from the hallway. "I will be right there," I replied, snapping back to the present while adjusting my tie. Every single detail had to be flawless. I wore a deep blue, subtly textured suit paired with silver cufflinks. On my right wrist, I wore a Patek Philippe that cost more than a suburban home. Everything was meticulously curated to match the impeccable taste of Julian Harrison. Not a single thread was out of place. I really was a professional. My attention to detail and flawless execution made me a living work of art. I stepped out of the sprawling suburban estate. A black Maybach sat idling by the curb. The driver opened the rear door with a respectful nod. I acknowledged him and slid into the plush leather seat. Olivia was engrossed in a document, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked up as I settled in. The icy mask she usually wore softened almost imperceptibly at the sight of me. "Good morning, Olivia," I said with a practiced, easy smile. I retrieved her favorite iced Americano from the built-in cooler. "2 sugars. I figured you would need the energy for the board meeting today." She hesitated for a moment. As she took the cup, her fingers brushed against the back of my hand. "How did you know about the board meeting?" she asked. "You mentioned it during a call last Friday," I replied casually. I pulled a folder from my briefcase and handed it to her. "Here is that market analysis you asked for," and I took the liberty of adding the updated third-quarter data. She took the folder, her eyes flickering as she scanned the first few pages. I knew exactly what was going through her mind. These were the things Julian used to do for her. To her, I was just a man on the payroll. Over the last 3 years, I had trained myself to be a better version of Julian than the man himself. I knew her favorite coffee order by heart. I knew she got anxious before major presentations. I knew she would instinctively reach for a hand to hold in the middle of a nightmare. When you are making 40 grand a month, you do not just phone it in. The car descended into the underground parking garage of the Sterling Industries Tower. Olivia closed the folder and looked at me. "There's a charity gala tonight," she said. "You are coming with me." Of course, I nodded. After a beat, I asked if there was anything specific I needed to prepare for. She glanced at me with an unreadable expression and told me to just be my usual self. He smiled, signifying he understood. Like usual meant I would have to adopt Julian's specific cadence at the gala. I would need to socialize with Julian's effortless charm. If the situation called for it, I would even have to kiss her the way Julian would. I had no psychological hang-ups about any of it. In fact, the whole thing was almost comical. What can I say? This ridiculous, novel-like life was fantastic. Luckily, I was a professional who knew how to maintain strict boundaries. The gala took place at one of the most opulent hotels in the city. The moment Olivia took my arm and we stepped into the ballroom, every eye in the room turned toward us. "Olivia, my dear, who is this?" a portly board member asked while giving me an appraising look. "This is Lucas Miller, my." She hesitated for a fraction of a second. I stepped in smoothly and extended my hand. "A friend of Olivia's. It is a pleasure to meet you." A friend was our official cover story. Nobody knew I was actually a paid stand-in. Halfway through the evening, Olivia was cornered by a group of aggressive business partners. I made myself scarce, retreating to a quiet corner with a glass of champagne. Suddenly, I felt a sharp, probing gaze fixed on me. I turned my head. Standing not far away was a man with a wry smile playing on his lips. His face was a more mature, more polished version of the one I saw in the mirror every morning. He shared my exact features, but he carried himself with an effortless grace that I could only ever hope to imitate. My heart gave a sudden, hard thud. It was Julian Harrison. My hand, holding the champagne flute, remained steady. I kept my perfect, practiced smile plastered on my face. Julian began walking toward me, each step a study in calculated elegance. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit and a tie with a muted, dark pattern. It was almost identical to my own outfit. Or rather, my outfit was identical to his. I was the copy, after all. "Excuse me," he said, stopping directly in front of me. His lips curled into a confident smirk as he said my name, Lucas Miller. I raised my glass in a mock toast and kept my voice even. "Mr. Harrison, I have heard so much about you." He let out a short laugh, his eyes sweeping from the watch on my wrist up to my face. "I see Olivia's taste has not changed one bit." I did not reply, choosing instead to take a slow sip of my champagne. Julian swirled the wine in his glass and leaned in close, lowering his voice. "Do you know why I came back early?" "I do not know, and I do not care," I said with a pleasant smile. "I'm just here to do a job." His eyes narrowed, clearly caught off guard by my directness. "You are a professional," he noted, "but this game is over." I raised an eyebrow in curiosity. $1 million, he said, his gaze locking onto mine. "Sign an NDA and disappear completely." I almost laughed out loud because this was definitely not in the original script. Between the $5 million severance and this $1 million bonus to vanish, I was looking at the deal of a lifetime. Externally, I remained a pillar of cool indifference. "Mr. Harrison, my contract with Miss Sterling is legally binding. The penalty for a breach of contract is 10 times my annual fee." "I'm aware of that," he said with a smirk. "So tell me, what is your price?" I simply shrugged and told him I just follow the terms of the contract. He understood my implication immediately. "Fine. $1 million to disappear right now," he said. I looked at him for 2 seconds and then broke into a wide grin. "Deal." Our glasses clinked together with a crisp, final sound. He knew exactly what I was after. By the time Olivia returned, Julian was gone. "Who were you talking to?" she asked. "Just an investor. We were discussing market trends." I lied without missing a beat. I took the empty glass from her hand. "Are you tired? We can leave if you want to." She shook her head, her gaze appearing somewhat distant. "Not yet. There are a few more clients I need to see." I nodded and did not press the issue but I knew the next act was about to begin. Sure enough, Olivia's lawyer called me the following morning. Mr. Miller, Miss Sterling would like to terminate your contract ahead of schedule. The impeccably dressed lawyer slid a folder across the polished table toward me. As per your agreement, here is a check for $5 million. I signed the papers without a moment of hesitation. I signed so quickly that even the lawyer blinked in surprise. Mr. Miller, you seem quite amenable to this, he remarked. It is just business, I said with a smile as I pocketed the check. Please thank Miss Sterling for her generosity over the past 3 years, I said. As I walked out of the corporate headquarters, I squinted against the bright morning sun. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from my bank. A deposit of $1 million from Julian Harrison's private account had cleared. I let out a low whistle and hailed a cab. The airport, please. 3 days later, I was on Miami Beach. I was stretched out on a lounger under a massive umbrella on a private beach. I had my sunglasses on and was lazily sipping iced coconut water. My phone lit up with a message from Julian that said, "She is looking for you." I scoffed and turned the device off completely. The money was already in my account. I did not care about the plot anymore. I rolled over to take a nap when a shadow suddenly fell over me. "Lucas," a familiar voice said, sending a jolt through my entire body. I slowly removed my sunglasses to see Olivia Sterling standing over me. She looked pale and had dark circles under her eyes. It was obvious she had not slept in days. "I have been looking for you for 3 days," she said in a hoarse voice. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" I wondered for a moment how she had found me, and then it clicked. She had tracked my location. I sat up and let out a long sigh. "Olivia, our contract is over," I told her. "I do not want a contract," she said, her voice rising and drawing looks from the nearby sunbathers. "I want you." The drama was right on cue. How amusing. I rubbed my temples and told her she needed to calm down. "I am calm," she insisted, staring at me with a terrifying intensity. "I've had 3 days to think, and I realized something. I do not love Julian. I love you. The habits, the little details, that was all you, Lucas, not him." I remained silent for a moment and then let out a short, humorless laugh. "Olivia, do you know how I was able to play that part so perfectly for 3 years?" I asked. She looked completely confused. "Because I was performing a role," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "Every cup of coffee at the perfect temperature, every well-timed word of concern, every single gesture, it was all calculated." I stood up and brushed the sand off my shorts. After all, 40 grand a month is a powerful motivator, wouldn't you agree? The color drained from her face. "I was paid to perform, and you paid me. Now we are even, and we owe each other nothing." I turned to walk away when she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Lucas," she cried, "how much did Julian pay you? I will double it." I stopped and sighed before pulling out my phone to call Julian. "What is it?" Julian asked, his voice sharp and annoyed. "Your girl is over here," I said in a lazy tone. "You might want to come pick her up." There were a few seconds of silence, followed by a cold laugh. "Send me the address," he said. 20 minutes later, a ridiculous drama unfolded under the shade of a beach cabana. Olivia and Julian were locked in a heated argument while I sat off to the side. I sipped my coconut water like a spectator at a tennis match. "You do not love him. You just got used to being taken care of." Julian snapped. The dialogue was truly terrible. "And what about you?" Olivia shot back. "You disappeared for 5 years and then waltzed back in just to sniff around for Sterling Industries Capital. Isn't that right?" Julian's face tightened. "You had me investigated?" I could not help myself from interrupting. "Excuse me. Sorry to interrupt, but can I go now?" "Shut up," they both yelled at me in unison. I just shrugged. Ultimately, with my expert mediation, Olivia agreed to at least talk things out with Julian for the time being. As for me, I was on a flight to Santa Fe that very night. Getting away from the drama is the key to survival. The flagstone paths of Santa Fe shimmered after a light rain. I sat on the second-floor balcony of my Adobe-style inn and slowly brewed a pot of oolong tea. My phone screen lit up with Julian's 17th missed call. I took a sip of my tea and swiped the notification away. The payment had already cleared, and I did not offer any post-sale support. The innkeeper brought over a plate of fruit. "Mr. Miller, are you thinking of heading up to see the Aspens today?" she asked. "No, I think I will just wander around the plaza," I said as I poured her a cup of tea. I gazed at the distant, cloud-shrouded mountains and let out a long breath. This was the real life. There were no contracts and no charades. That evening, the owner came rushing up the stairs looking flustered. "Mr. Miller, there's a lady downstairs looking for you," she said. "She says she is your fiancée." The teacup nearly slipped from my grasp. Olivia had tracked me down again. I shot to my feet and peered over the balcony railing. Olivia Sterling was standing right there. She was looking right up at me. As our eyes met, a triumphant smile touched her lips. 10 minutes later, we were sitting in the inn's quiet tea room. "How did you find me this time?" I asked her bluntly. "Credit card receipts under your name," she replied. "Lucas, you underestimate the resources of Sterling Industries," she said. I rubbed my temples and told her we were done. "No," she said, "we are just beginning." She suddenly grabbed my hand with shocking strength. "I spent the last 3 days digging into things," she said. "Julian only came back for our new green energy division. He does not love me." I tried to pull my hand away and asked what that had to do with me. "It has everything to do with you," she said as her nails dug into my skin. "You were the one who was actually by my side for 3 years," she said. I calmly interrupted her to remind her those coffees and reports were all part of the act. "Olivia, you paid for a substitute Julian Harrison," I said. Her eyes immediately welled up with tears. "Then tell me this," she said. "While I was in the hospital with that fever last year, and you stayed by my side for 3 days straight, was that an act too?" I paused for a fraction of a second. The contract required me to portray a concerned partner. However, when she had grabbed my hand in a delirious haze and whispered for me not to leave, I had stayed a little longer than necessary. That was professional integrity, I finally told her. Olivia shot to her feet, and the teacup overturned, sending dark tea spreading across the wooden table like a stain. "Fine, just fine," she said with a trembling voice. "In that case, I am hiring you again at double your old salary, $100,000 a month." I sighed and pulled out my phone to call Julian. "What now?" he asked with pure irritation. "Your girl is over here in Santa Fe offering me $100,000 a month to come back," I said. "According to our previous arrangement, I believe this constitutes a counteroffer that requires a renegotiation of your payment." I heard the sound of something shattering on the other end of the line. That night, in a suite at a luxury Santa Fe resort, the second act of the melodrama commenced. "Olivia, are you insane, chasing a hired substitute across the country?" Julian asked as he yanked his tie loose. "And you," Olivia retorted, "are you chasing me just to fund your failing project?" I sat on the sofa, methodically peeling a tangerine. "Lucas," Julian said, suddenly rounding on me, "you took the money, so you were supposed to stick to the deal." I swallowed a slice of tangerine and held up my hands in a gesture of innocence. "Hey, I did not call her here," I said. Olivia grabbed her purse and hurled it at Julian, screaming about how he dared to try and buy me off. "He is scamming you for your money. Olivia, wake up. He is just an actor." Julian roared back. The room fell silent. I wiped my hands, stood up, and headed for the door. "Well, you two have fun. I am out of here." "Stop," they both yelled in unison. I turned back, looking exasperated. "What now?" I asked. Olivia took a deep breath, pulled a document from her bag, and slapped it on the table. It was a new contract offering $200,000 a month just to be myself. I looked at the contract on the table, and then at Julian's furious face before I started to laugh. "You know, Olivia," I said as I picked up the contract and slowly tore it in half, "there are some things that money really cannot buy." As they both stared in stunned silence, I opened the door and walked out. The next morning, I was on a flight to Anchorage, Alaska. I powered down my phone and smiled. I doubted she could follow me all the way there. The wind at the airport in Anchorage carried the bite of distant glaciers. After being off the grid for 3 days, my phone exploded with notifications the moment I turned it on. I had 27 messages from Olivia and 13 from Julian. I marked them all as read and booked a bunk at a downtown hostel. I was over 3,000 miles away from New York, so I figured she would never find me here. The guy running the hostel was a grizzled man who looked like he had wrestled a bear. "Let me guess, kid, heartbreak?" he asked. My hand paused as I handed him my ID. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Only 3 kinds of people come all the way up here," he said. "The broke, the broken-hearted, and the crazy. You do not look like the first 2. I just smiled and took my key for the 6-bed dorm. That evening, I was smoking on the rooftop deck when a girl named Maya handed me a beer. "Looks like you got dumped by some rich girl," she remarked. "No," I replied. "I was the one who dumped her." I suddenly froze. Amid the tourists in the downtown square, a tall and elegant figure stood out. Even with sunglasses and a face mask, I knew it was Olivia. "What is wrong?" Maya asked, following my gaze. "Wow, that woman has some serious style," she said. I grabbed her wrist and asked where the back exit was. 5 minutes later, I was crouching behind a dumpster in the back alley. Olivia had actually landed in Anchorage on the same day as me, arriving just 2 hours later. "Is that the rich girl?" Maya asked, squatting next to me. "Chasing you all the way to Alaska is some next-level dedication." My hands were shaking slightly as I asked her if there was any way to avoid her. "Easy," Maya said, blowing a smoke ring. "Tomorrow, you come with me to a camp near Denali. Rich girls like that usually cannot survive a day out there." My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia that said, "Lucas, I see you. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a few seconds and then started to laugh. We eventually met at a restaurant with a panoramic view of the water. Olivia took off her sunglasses, revealing red-rimmed eyes. "You have lost weight," was the first thing she said to me. "Olivia, what is the point of all this?" I asked as I poured myself a glass of water. "I am not here to chase you," she said softly. "I am here to apologize." She slid a worn bag across the table. Inside were a few tattered programming textbooks and an old laptop. These were the only items I had kept from my life before the contract. "You went through my things?" I asked, my throat feeling tight. "I found them when I was clearing out the guest room," she said, looking at me. "Lucas, who are you really?" Just as the silence became unbearable, Julian Harrison appeared at the top of the stairs, breathing heavy. His bespoke suit looked comically out of place in the rusty room. "I knew I would find you here," he fumed, wearing a face. Olivia did not even look up and simply told him the project was canceled. "What?" Julian stammered, his face turning pale. "For him, for this substitute." I quietly edged my chair away to avoid the impending blast. "He is not a substitute," Olivia said calmly. "He was the one by my side for 3 years, and he was the one who remembered my habits." "Julian, what right do you have to call him a substitute?" I awkwardly cleared my throat and told them to have a nice chat while I left. "Stay right there," they both shouted. I ignored them and called Maya to ask if her Jeep had room for one day. Half an hour later, while those two were still arguing over investment portfolios, I was in Maya's beat-up Wrangler speeding toward Denali National Park. The morning at the Denali base camp was brutally cold and the wind was howling. Olivia stood at the edge of the camp, wearing a bright yellow expedition suit. "I chartered a private helicopter," she said as she reached me, her breath forming a white cloud. "We need to talk." I took off my down jacket and wrapped it around her, telling her we should talk inside the tent. Inside the tent, Olivia cradled a mug of hot tea. "I cracked the password on your laptop," she said, looking me directly in the eyes. "I saw the code and the folder you labeled the old one." "You are from another place, are not you?" she asked softly. Her words hit me like a thunderclap. "Think of it as a parallel universe." I finally knew. To my complete surprise, a look of profound relief washed over her face. "That explains why you always looked at me like I was some kind of science experiment," she whispered. "I just have one question. If there had never been a contract, would any of this have happened?" she asked. "Never," I said firmly. "We were always on 2 different tracks, Olivia." She let out a soft laugh and told me I was cruel, but she was letting me go. She thanked me for the last 3 years and handed me an envelope containing a black credit card. "Julian is broke and heading back to London, so he will not be a problem for you anymore," she said. We both started laughing. 3 months later, I was in Cartagena, Colombia. I sat in a cafe in the old walled city, watching raindrops trace paths down the stones. An email from Olivia Sterling appeared on my laptop screen. The body of the message contained only one sentence. I finally learned to make my own coffee. The financial news on the television reported that Sterling Industries had terminated its partnership with Harrison Holdings to pivot into the AI sector. My phone buzzed. It was a voice message from Maya. "You will never guess who I saw in Sri Lanka," she said. "That frenemy Julian is hauling crates on a shipping freight." I sent back a laughing emoji. Tucked inside my travel journal was a bank card with a balance of over $6 million. The rain stopped, and a flock of white doves soared past the church steeple. I took one last look at the photo in the email. Olivia stood tall in a sharp suit, her eyes shining like stars. Our parallel lines were finally extending toward their own separate horizons in Odiseo. It was a dramatic romance. For Lucas Miller, it was a high-paying job. By treating a substitute love as a professional contract, Lucas mastered the art of passion. He didn't just leave with $6 million. He left with his soul intact. His success lies in a simple truth. When passion is priced and boundaries are respected, the exit is not a tragedy, but a triumph of professional integrity. He proved that the most attractive thing about a person isn't their loyalty to a ghost, but their commitment to their own freedom.